name is Grace Ross, and I'm here with Kate Palmaceio and Sarah McKee, and we're here to talk to you today a little bit about your ability to fight foreclosures, which is actually way more than you think. So you want to tell people a little bit about who you are?
My name's Kate Palmaceio, and I'm a single mom living in a house that I bought in Lunenburg when I was 22 years old. I've been fighting the foreclosure crisis for many years, and with Grace's help, I've had a lot of great success with my court case.
So far. And this is Sarah McKee. You want to tell people a little bit about who you are?
Sure. I used to be a federal prosecutor, and when I moved to Massachusetts, I happened to meet Grace and get interested in foreclosure issues, and I've been working on them for the last couple of years.
So we're all part of an organization called the Mass Alliance Against Preditory Lending. We shorthand it as MAPLE, and I'm the coordinator. And what we wanted to talk you through a little bit about is if you've been foreclosed in the past or you might face foreclosure in the future, you have rights and you have the power to have a real impact on what happens. We spend a lot of time with the very powerful and very wealthy telling us you can't, you're not smart enough, you're stupid, it's all your fault. None of that is true, and that's what we're here to debunk today. So you want to tell people how you got into the crisis and what happened in terms of trying to do something with a home?
So when I originally bought my house in 2002 as a first-time home buyer, I was only 22 years old, and unfortunately I broke up with my fiance. So in 2008, I was forced to refinance on my own. I took, I guess, whatever loan was available to me at a time as a single woman. So it was an adjustable, subprime, predatory loan.
Bad news all around.
All the way around, yep. I realized, once the payment had gone way up, that it was a little bit too much for me to take care of, so I tried to do the right thing and put the house on the market. It was on the market for about a year, and unfortunately, even though I had paid that many years, I was underwater, so they told me I had to pay $20,000 to get out of the mortgage.
So if you sold the house, you were going to have to find $20,000 to put into the sale.
Instead of building equity like it should have been. So I was forced to file bankruptcy. And then from there, I had already moved and was in a new apartment, and the second winter of heating the house that I had filed bankruptcy on, I decided to move back because I couldn't afford to maintain two houses.
And no one had come along to buy it.
No one had even contacted me whatsoever. So I moved back to the house and was finally contacted in 2012 by Bank of America. And they had offered me a modification program, so I sent in all my paperwork in order to get approved for that. And before I even got an answer...
Slow you down a second. So that was to try and get a loan modification.
Yes.
To make it affordable.
Yes, and in that modification that they offered me, they made it clear that they knew that it was a subprime predatory loan that, according to the federal bailout, that they were supposed to modify. Before I even got an answer from them, it was then reassigned to Greentree. So I had to start the entire process all over again. So after sending my paperwork into Greentree multiple different times...
Yes, you're responsible for deforesting a whole part of the planet, I'm sure.
I had gotten approved for a modification that was way higher than fair market value, way higher than what my payment was before.
So why modify? It's worse than what it was.
It was completely ridiculous. So at that point, I had totally given up and decided to take their deed in lieu program, which meant that I would basically just sign my name off and give them the house for nothing. About a month
And they were all excited about it.
Oh, I'm sure they were. But a month later, they sent me a denial letter saying that they did not have a clear and marketable title.
They didn't want the house that they had messed up the title on.
Well, because I had title insurance, so I know I didn't do anything wrong with the title. So at that point, I looked into several different options, and luckily I contacted you and learned that, obviously they made multiple mistakes and that I still had a chance to fight.
So tell folks a little bit then. So who did you connect with, and what happened for you?
So I looked up my local organization, which would have been WAFT, the Worcester Anti-Foreclosure Team, and I went on the MAPLE website, Massachusetts Alliance Against Predatory Lending, and then I actually set up a consultation with you. You went through all my paperwork, and we just waited for them to make the next step, which was to actually foreclose and hold a public auction at my house.
Okay, and so we're going to get into the public auction in a second, but did something change for you when you connected with a local organization?
Yes, I guess I finally had some hope come back to me, because I had totally given up and was petrified and scared, and for many years I kind of felt like a failure. I mean, I had a good job. I bought my first house when I was 22. My grandfather, who grew up in the Great Depression, had told me that the best, safest way to save your money was to buy a home, and that it became a generational thing to pass down, to your children. And unfortunately, I guess I got caught in that bubble, and even though I paid for that many years, I had built absolutely no equity in my home whatsoever.
So one of the reasons I asked Kate about what her experience was finally connecting with a group is that if you've been through a foreclosure or you're fighting a foreclosure by yourself, we feel like that's overwhelming, and really strongly encourage you. The difference, well, as you were saying, when you connect with people.
Yeah, the support that you get from people, because your self-esteem gets ruined, and you really do. You feel hopeless and lost and like a failure. Years and years of failing.
So I'm going to take you to the moment of the auction. So some folks show up at the property with a clipboard. And so what happened in your situation?
Well, luckily, because I had contacted the group, I had a lot of support, where they held an entire protest and videotaped the auction. So, at least I didn't have to go through the whole thing alone, because it was very emotional.
How old was Jax at that point?
He was there. He wasn't walking yet, so maybe he was 9 months, 10 months?
Yeah, so that's a big deal for your son.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have been present if I hadn't contacted you, because I wouldn't have wanted to witness it.
Yeah, did you mention?
Oh, yes, and actually I had never been to a foreclosure auction before. And so this is how we met.
Yes.
And I arrived a little bit later than I intended to. So what were there, 10 or 12 people there?
Yeah.
And there was an auctioneer, and he was out in the street. And there were some people who'd come to bid on the house.
Which is scary.
I mean, how did you feel when you saw that?
Very scared.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things that go on at an auction, and we try and protest them, and there's actually materials on the Maple website, which is www.maapl.info, that will help walk you through things you can do to protect yourself at the auction. And things actually went not the absolute best, which is when you get a postponement, but the second best, because the investors who came got scared off by the fact that Kate was ready to fight. And it makes a huge difference in terms of saving your home and saving your equity in the home, even if you don't end up staying in the home, to have help at the auction and to protect yourself. So I'm going to keep us moving just because of time. So the bank bought back, but it turned out it wasn't the bank you thought it was.
No, because I assumed it was Green Tree, who had been sending me my bills the entire time. It was actually Fannie Mae.
And so then what happened?
So then about 2 months passed, and I got a 72-hour notice to quit, is what it's called.
Right, and that's very scary.
Extremely scary, because it says you basically have 72 hours to vacate the premises.
But legally, that's not what it means. It's actually just the first step in an eviction process. And we strongly encourage folks not only to stay in the home because it's your home, but it also turns out that legally you do better if you stay in your home and let them evict you. If you try and sue them, then the shoe's on your foot. You have to prove everything. Whereas if you wait till they're evicting you, then it's their court case and they have to prove everything.
So then a couple weeks later, I got an actual court notice, which gives me the option to go to court to present my case. And so they give you a date, and then usually there's a date before that where you have to file what's called an answer in discovery, which is a whole bunch of documents that you want them to prove to the court. So basically to find out that they followed the law and went through everything legally. Didn't follow the law.
So it's our opportunity to get all of the documents that they would need to prove what they did was legal, or as we usually find out, it mostly proves that what they did was illegal.
Illegal, yes.
So what was your your experience trying to get together for court? I know that you found out the lawyers they had hired were some of the most expensive lawyers in the state, and you weren't in a position to pay for a lawyer.
No, I was not. No. At first, they had just the regular lawyers, and then I think after my answer in discovery was filed, then they hired another firm. So it was like 5 lawyers on me. It was scary. It was very scary. But because I got education and support going to the meetings, and from the group, I was able to gain the knowledge. I mean, not only learn the laws that you need to know that they have to follow, but also just be educated in how to defend myself in court.
Like what? Just an example.
Like the right to cure period, that
What helped you in court, though? What do you think was most helpful for you in court?
basically knowing that I had support there.
So a team of folks came with you, sat in the bleachers, cheered you on.
Cheered me on, yeah. Just knowing all the mistakes that they made, so that I knew that I actually, had a reason to be there.
So when you started out, you didn't think the bank had messed everything up. You knew you had a bad loan, but you didn't realize that they had.
I knew they messed everything up, but it's like very intimidating because you're taking on someone who is big. Someone that you'd never think that you'd be able to fight against.
Right. And were you nervous standing in front of the judge the first time?
Oh, yes. Very nervous.
But you're in one piece now.
I am in one piece now, yeah. And proud of myself that I did it.
Because you never would have thought you could do it.
No. And I feel like the bank shouldn't be getting away with doing all this to people.
That's the bottom line, isn't it?
Yeah.
So did you want to say a little bit about what you witnessed in court with Kate in court?
Yes, I would love to. I was there with several other people supporting Kate, and when I saw you walk in with all your documents in your valise, with your wheeled whatever it is, and wearing that suit, and you walked so confidently. I mean, really, you couldn't tell that you were you shaking in your shoes?
Oh, yes.
Well, it didn't show.
Well, that's great. Thanks.
And I was just so proud of you. You stood up straight in court. You spoke clearly. You absolutely knew the facts of your case. You knew what was in all the documents. And that day they just sent one other lawyer.
Yeah, it was
a woman.
A woman.
And I suspect they'd thought that putting 5 attorneys against person representing herself doesn't look so good to the judge, and they wanted to make it look more even. I'm sure it was the appearance of it.
They had 5 lawyers there. I think they did that to scare you, and then you didn't scare.
Yes.
And so then they tried something different.
Yes, they sent just one small woman lawyer, and then there were 5 of us there, I think, supporting you in the bleachers. And I had 2 favorite parts. And my first favorite part was when the judge turned to you and said, well, Miss Palmaceio, this is after she said, well, you can't walk in here with all these documents and expect the court to look at all these documents, or words to that effect. And then she turned to you and said, Miss Palmaceio, what do you think should happen here? And you said clearly, respectfully, you said, I think someone should look at the evidence. There is no more perfect answer to that question. It was brilliant. And my other favorite part, and this is slightly wicked. This was when you raised a point about a law that the bank had violated.
Yeah.
And within 30 days after they take possession with foreclosure, they must notify the municipality so the town, the city knows where to send the tax bills, the water bills, that sort of thing. It's in the statutes. It's a matter of strict liability, and that's what you said. You said, Your Honor, this is a matter of strict liability, and the judge said, yes, but you can't use that to win in here. And I thought to myself, reversible error. So this is a really important point, that first time, what you want to look at is things that the court did wrong as well as the bank, so you can appeal.
Right.
Well, and I want to backtrack for our listeners a little bit. So Sarah's background is as a prosecutor, right? She's one of those folks that's used to getting up and having to make an argument in court against somebody who did something criminal. We're mostly dealing with situations that probably should be criminal but are being seen as civil right now. So we don't get to have prosecutors to prosecute our cases for us. We either hire a lawyer or people have to stand up and do it themselves. So Sarah's got quite the eye for this kind of stuff. So what is your sense of sort of like, sort of looking at Kate, who, in her first hearing had never stood in front of a judge and was terrified, and I wasn't there, but she called me and said, I think my knees were shaking. What was your sense? She was on, your third appearance at that point where you had to make the full argument?
Yeah. My other appearances were short compared to this one. This was my
Right.
full argument.
Oh, this was a good 40 minutes.
Yeah, it was a long time.
Yeah. So what was your impression?
You did a better job on your case than 9 out of 10 lawyers could have done.
Do you have advanced
Oh,
degrees?
Thank you. No, I don't. not in law, anyways.
Yeah, so the reason I ask you that is because I think people find, first of all, the idea of going in front of a judge is just terrifying.
It is.
In and of itself. And I think that this stuff where you've been told for years you can't understand it, you just got to sort of like do your best and try and argue with the bank if and when they'll ever talk to you, that it's really hard to get up and feel like, oh, I could know what I was saying. But you took a lot of time, right? You read through a lot of stuff.
And tried to learn the laws. And then not only that, but learn their mistakes.
Right. So we went through each document for our listeners. We went through each document, read through them, and literally said, oh, look, here's where they said this, but they were supposed to do that. And in your case, the big underlying issue was that you thought the party that was sending you the bills was the party that actually had the mortgage and had a right to foreclose, and it turned out they never ever had the mortgage.
I think that's what most people think, though. I don't think most people understand that there's a
hidden party
versus someone who actually owns it.
Right. So the party that actually owns your mortgage, the easiest way to find them in theory is to go into the Registry of Deeds, and again, on the Maple website, www.maapl.info. There are some legal documents you can read your way through, and they'll explain some of these differences, and they'll tell you how to get onto your Registry of Deeds and find documents. But it turns out, in your case, and in lots of the cases now, the party that's even at the Registry of Deeds isn't the party that actually has your mortgage.
And that's what my case is, The party, it was Green Tree that's at the Registry of Deeds, but they don't own my mortgage.
So this is really important. And how did she do on explaining Fannie Mae's role?
She did beautifully. I mean, this is, I think, hard for people to get precisely because as you said, you assume that you know who owns your mortgage because that's who you're dealing with. And here it turns out that Fannie Mae had bought your mortgage loan
2 months after origination, within 60 days. And the important part of that, too, is if I had known that way, more previously, Fannie Mae is supposed to have this country's best modification programs.
They have the best loan modification programs.
Were offered to me. None of them.
Yeah. So, and actually on Fannie Mae's own website, folks will remember Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are the big supposedly guarantors of mortgages, but actually they directly own about 50 to 60% of the mortgages. And Fannie Mae in particular has a whole bunch of programs for people, and if you go on their website and you look up your mortgage, there's actually a place to look up your mortgage, and they own it. They will tell you if they own it in most cases. And on that page, it says it's very important to know who owns your mortgage because that's how you get things figured out. So on their website, they're saying to you, this is critical, you've got to know this. But when it comes to looking up something where you're supposed to be able to at the Registry of Deeds, which is like our public library of who owns a piece of property or who has an interest in a property like a mortgage, turns out you can't get the information there.
It's kind of like they remain hidden from origination until foreclosure.
They do, and they don't want their name in the registry, but it means that you don't have the information that you should have necessarily to fight your rights.
So you have no fair chance to even modify it.
Right. So just to give people a little more background before we sign off here, you actually role-played with people.
Yes,
right?
I
People
did.
actually peppered you with questions
Yeah.
and made you practice.
Yep, and it helped a lot. Definitely helped a lot to know what I was going to say, and to feel more comfortable in court.
Had you ever role played something with anybody
I've
before?
helped other people do it.
You
so,
have? Oh,
yeah,
so it wasn't
yeah.
too strange.
No. So, and I think it's important that the group does that so that you get support before going into court, you know. So
And-
that they can be prepared for different questions they might be asked or.
And people know the judges, so they were able to actually give you a sense of how the judges would behave,
Right, yeah.
which helps. So that's awesome. So what, just before we close, if there was one thing, somebody who's listening to this, who, you know, has a family member who was, you know, maybe facing a foreclosure, or maybe knows somebody who supposedly lost their home to what they were assuming was a legal foreclosure maybe 8 years ago, what would you want them to know?
I would want them to know that it's probably not too late to fight. You have a long time in Massachusetts to fight an illegal foreclosure.
How long?
20 years.
Okay. So, and why do you say probably not too late?
Well, maybe it was 21 years ago.
All right, well, so most of the bad foreclosures started in 2004, maybe 2005. You've got 20 years. And I guess the thing I would add to what Sarah said is that what we know now is the vast majority of them were illegal. In fact, it's probably close to all of them. So if you had that, sort of you were describing, you knew they'd done everything wrong, but if you have that feeling, or if you think someone might have that feeling if they looked at your paperwork, please be in touch, because in fact, Massachusetts, there have been some 70,000 foreclosures. We think the vast majority of them were illegal. A lawyer recently got involved with us who did the math and said that this means the state has lost $8 to $12 trillion in home in household wealth.
That went out of state.
Vast
or even
majority.
out of country, probably.
Right, could have gone to Deutsche Bank. Yep.
Yeah.
And so this is a massive issue for all of us, and it's people coming back in and getting justice that's going to rebuild our economy. What would you want to say to folks?
I would want people to contact MAPLE, the Massachusetts Alliance Against Predatory Lending website, or their local group like the Worcester Anti-Foreclosure Team, and to, you know, contact the group, get some support, see what options are out there, and to join the fight so that we can finally put an end to this and not let the banks win.
Great.
That is a terrific closing argument.
Fabulous. So for anybody who's interested, there are the local groups that Kate has talked about. Go to the Maple website, www.maapl.info. There is a self-help page there. You can go find the group closest to you. You can also, there's a place to put in your information about your situation, and seriously, you 70,000 who are out there, we want you, because it's going to be together that, as Kate said, we're going to turn this around. So please go on the website, sign up. We also have foreclosures are way back up. We're looking at rates approaching 2011, which was the second worst year, and they're still climbing all across the state. So someone near you, even if you're not somebody who owns your home, or you're somebody who owns your home and you're not anywhere near in trouble with your mortgage, someone near you is. And we are working on building teams across the state to do what Kate said made such a difference for her, which is to have folks like Sarah, who may not be facing a foreclosure herself, show up and be there at the auction, and protect our neighbors. You know, you reach back to you know, the Great Depression and previous times. The way that foreclosures stopped, even coming into the American Revolution, was when people stood on each other's property and told the banks that they were not allowed to take someone's home illegally. And we really need that. So that's something else you can do at the Maple website, is to sign up to be a volunteer and to back people in your local area. It's very important, and we want to make this increase in foreclosures, we want to make be radically different for the banks. We don't want them to feel like they can get away with it anymore. And it's going to be each of us standing up for our neighbors and rebuilding that web of life that, you know, for those of us who grew up in a neighborhood where you got yelled at by your friends' parents if you misbehaved. Yeah. Those kinds of communities. And you can also call and leave a message at 508-630-1686. That's 508-630-1686. If you don't speak English, leave a message there anyway. We have folks who speak lots of different languages, and you're going to find more and more stuff on our website in multiple languages. In addition, there was a bad law that was passed that we're fighting, but it means that now is a very important time for you to get back involved. If you were previously foreclosed, we think you can win and get your home back. But you're going to need to take a couple of actions in the next year before the end of 2016 to protect those 20-year rights, which we all have and which we hope to ensure in the future. But at the moment, we want to make sure you personally are protected. Please, if you hear the show, tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell people you know, because while Kate talked about getting past the hopelessness and the shame, it's only when we reach out to those people that you're going to find out that you even knew people who were foreclosed, and we've got to find each other. Now's the time. Thanks.
Thank you.